as it should be.
Lives have been lost.
Welcome to Newsline, and you're watching On Point. Today we have two on points. The first on point is on the Gen Z protest against the government in Nepal. The second on point is on India's balancing act on China and United States of America. And now let's take a quick look at the headlines. Government says situation under control in Karnataka's Mandya after communal clash in district after stones pelted on Lord Ganesha's procession. BJD BRS to abstain from voting in vice presidential polls. Opposition holds mock drill. New US short-term visa rule means longer wait for Indians as Trump tightens norm. Aam Aadmi Party slams Delhi CM Rekha Gupta over allowing husband to sit in government meetings, takes Fulera Panchayat swipe. Supreme Court refuses relief to Nitish Katara murder convict Vikas Yadav. FM Nirmala Sitharaman takes a dig at DMK, says party has separatist mindset. As Yamuna water level drops in Delhi, residents confront the challenge of mud cleanup. Palestinian gunmen kill 6 at Jerusalem bus stop. Police call the attack one of the deadliest in the city in last few years. Ukraine imports Indian origin diesel fuel after loss of key refinery, says analysts. Twenty persons were killed and 80 injured in the clash between young Gen Z protesters and the police in Kathmandu. 42 other protesters also sustained injuries as police responded with water cannons, tear gas and rubber bullets. Gen Z protesters took to the streets protesting against corruption, government ban on 26 social media apps. Curfew has been imposed in multiple towns of Nepal. The protests were led by youth under 28 with no party affiliations. Protesters carried placards reading "Shut down corruption" and "Not social media." Unban social media and youths against corruption as they marched through the streets of Kathmandu in the past few days. The social media ban has also made youth unleash their wrath at Nepo kids, which is nepotism. That's what the crowd actually meant. Who are the children of politicians who owe their social standing to their parents rather than anything they have done. So what triggered the Gen Z rebellion being seen as Nepal's Erupt Spring movement? The protest came days after Nepal Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli ordered a shutdown of 26 social media platforms including tech giants Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp, Signal, WeChat after their refusal to register with the government. Oli government wanted apps to endorse a move to bring their users under the state vigilance under a law it plans to introduce. The organizers said that they are protesting rampant corruption, widespread inequality, and the government's clampdown on dissent. The government alleged social media users with fake IDs have been spreading hate speech and committing fraud and other crimes. The Nepal government says it took action against the social media giants after it repeatedly warned them to open offices in Nepal following cabinet decision last month. However, the proposed bill, the operation, use and regulation of social media in Nepal has not yet been passed by Parliament. Even as demands for the resignation of Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli are growing, he called an emergency cabinet meeting to discuss the situation. So what did Prime Minister Oli say on the Gen Z rebellion? I hear of a planned Gen Z rebellion. 1. We are not against social networks. We are against lawlessness, arrogance and belittling our country. We told social networks to register under Nepal's law. Told networks to pay taxes. They replied, we don't know your constitution. This is what KP Sharma Oli said. On the other hand, former Prime Minister and Maoist leader Pushpa Kamal Dahal Prachanda has come out in support of the protesters. He said the banning the social media application was a mistake and goes against people's rights. The protest planned by Gen Z youth is natural and should not be suppressed. Prachanda said the government must desist from using force against demonstrators. Now that brings us to the question, which are the biggest charges of corruption leveled against the Oli government? The Giri Bandhu tea estate scandal for illegal attempts to sell land originally allocated to the estate is one of the oldest allegations against the Oli government. Another allegation relates to buying COVID supplies at inflated rates in Omni Pharma procurement scam. Other charges include allegedly giving government land to the Yeti group without any bidding process and land approval, to Patanjali beyond legal sealing, and the fake Bhutanese refugee scam in which Nepalis were allegedly trafficked abroad under false IDs. Now, significantly, pro-monarchy groups are tacitly backing the youth uprising. A section of the Nepalese wants restoration of monarchy in country, citing rampant corruption and political instability. Cyber attacks have been carried out against corrupt officials in recent past. The monarchy in Nepal has officially abolished in 2008, since Nepal has seen extreme instability with 13 prime ministers serving in short, often tumultuous tenures. Let me play out a couple of bites from ground zero.
यहाँ आउने बित्तिकै यहाँ अब पिसफुल प्रोटेस्ट गर्ने भनेर हामी प्लान गरेर आएको थियौं। यहाँ साथीहरु हामी यहाँ आउने बित्तिकै यहाँ नराम्रो एकदम नराम्रो इन्सिडेन्ट, यहाँ पुलिसहरुको मिसबिहेभ हेर्न सकिन्छ। यहाँनिर जबरजस्ती युवाहरुलाई गोली हानिरहेको छ। यो पिसफुल प्रोटेस्टको यो अलिकति पनि हैन। यो माथिबाट बसेको मान्छेहरुले यस्तो गर्न पाउँदैन। यो
कुनै नेताले पिटाछ न कसैले केही गरेछ न जलाएको छ। अब क्रोध हामी पक्छौं। हामीले तिरेको करबाट यहाँ नेता पाल्ने अनि हाम्रो साथीहरुलाई गोली लागिरहने यो कहाँको न्याय हो नि? यो नेपालमा हामीले खोजेको रोजेको पाइदैन। विदेश धान्नु पर्छ रोजगारीको लागि, पेट पाल्नको लागि, र यहाँ हामी आज आन्दोलन गर्दाखेरि गोली खानु पर्या छ।
Now on this debate, I'm joined by Ambassador Veena Sikri, former Indian diplomat. Thank you so much, Pan, for joining me. S.D. Muni, author and Professor Emeritus, School of International Studies, JNU. Thank you so much, sir, for joining me, making time. From Kathmandu, I'm joined by Guru Baral, member, Central Committee, Nepalese Congress. Thank you so much. Rupesh Shresth, Deputy Chief, Kantipur TV, from Kathmandu. Let me first go to the people in ground zero. Rupesh, why have these protests erupted so violently in Kathmandu? Was it in making in last 1 week? A lot of people are saying it's not spontaneous. Subcontinent has seen two similar protests, one in Sri Lanka, another in Bangladesh. Your comments, sir. Rupesh.
Started within this week after the decision of social media ban in Nepal. After social media ban in Nepal, the Gen Z youths collected views on social media. They got the videos of the politicians who are alleged as the corrupt people, and their children are having the, let's say, they were preparing for the protest on digital mediums. They were having meetings on digital mediums and making the videos viral on TikTok and Reddit. They were discussing about the service delivery, poor service delivery of Nepali government, and they were asking for the service delivery, the governance. They were protesting against poor governance since long. So the digital initiation grounded on the street today that killed 19 plus people on the ground. So we can say that people were frustrated about the government's delivery, be it the CPN UML's government or Nepali Congress government or Maoist government, whichever government is in the form, they have not delivered well. The frustrations accumulated since long, that people are going abroad for employment and studies opportunities, and there is no environment for proper business and startups. So after all, at the end of the day, they ended up in the street after the decision of social media ban that the government got recently this week.
Okay. I'm also joined by Surendra Fuyal, journalist from Nepal. Thank you so much, sir, for joining me. Let me straight away go to Guru Baral. Mr. Baral, your opening comments, sir.
नेपाल में जेनजी पुस्ता के आंदोलन में जे हो रहा है कि नेपाल के सवाल में नया चेंज यंगर्सहरू चेंज के बारे में फाइट कर रहा है। अगर नेपाल में जुन खाल का दुर्भाग्य हुआ वो नेपाल के हिस्ट्री में बहुत दुर्भाग्य है। जनधन का बहुत क्षति हो गया। गवर्नमेंट में सावधानी नहीं अपनाया। गवर्नमेंट में इसमें
I was dealing with back pain every day. My old mattress has no support, and honestly, my back pain has gotten even worse.
So, I upgraded to the Sleep Company mattress, जो कि है इंडिया का फर्स्ट एंड ओनली स्मार्ट ग्रिड टेक्नोलॉजी मैट्रेस। स्मार्ट ग्रिड मुझे देता है सॉफ्ट कंफर्ट और फर्म बैक सपोर्ट ताकि मेरी बैक पूरे दिन अलाइन रहे। The mattress also has SnowTech cooling fabric that keeps it 4 to 6 degrees cooler. Cool, comfy, and perfectly supportive. It's like sleeping on a cloud. You also get a 10-year warranty and 100-night trial. If it doesn't work for you, which I doubt, you can return it. No questions asked. Search for the Sleep Company online and find your nearest store.
अब संयमता की जरूरी है। मैं यही निवेदन करना चाहता हूँ।
Sir, Guru Baral ji, आप बने रहिए. Mr. Fuyal, your opening comments, sir. What has happened? Was Nepal taken by surprise? I would say neighborhood was taken certainly by surprise, sir.
Yeah, it was completely taken by surprise. This was not expected. They were expecting some kind of small revolution, small protest in the heart of Kathmandu, but then, when thousands and thousands of kids, Gen Z people and others, came, and Gen Z has issued a statement saying that our protests were infiltrated by other elements. So all kinds of people came and protested against. Just yesterday, just a day before, controversial businessman Durga Prasad had announced that he would join this protest, and then the pro-monarchy Rashtriya Prajatantra Party leader Gyanendra Sahi too had said he would be joining the protest, but they were never nowhere to be seen today. But whatever happened, was shouldered by Gen Z movement, which is a very little known movement. It hardly exists in the Nepali media scape or societal scape as such. But things turned terribly violent, and the government is meeting now and is trying to decide, is working to decide. They're discussing ways to quell these protests and decide their next course of action.
Professor Muni, your opening comments, sir. We have seen what has happened in Dhaka, sir. We saw what happened in Sri Lanka, in Colombo. One actually restored the democratic process. In another, a complete new regime took over. Your analysis of the situation which has unfolded on the streets of Kathmandu, sir.
Well, you should also add Indonesia, which has recently seen a similar kind of a scene. To my mind, the youth have taken the leadership, and on the forefront, it is their rebellion, it is their uprising. But frankly speaking, what they are expressing is the frustration of a huge chunk of the Nepali politics. In every political party, including the ruling parties, there is a huge dissent against corruption and inefficiency. The government has not delivered at all. In the last 2 months, I have seen several articles published in Nepali media against this, that look, this kind of a culture cannot go on and people are frustrating. You have very rightly listed all the corruption cases. There are many more small ones where the frustration is out of it. The governance has all been put in the cold storage. So I think this is a resentment which is very widespread. That's why it has gone around. There is no doubt that there are some organization, in the sense that the students, the youth has been telling the government to do something about it. Now, sudden closure of the social media was a big trigger because they could not communicate, they could not talk to their relations, they could not talk to their friends, and therefore they started organizing in this manner, which is absolutely natural. It looks like an uprising which is sudden, unplanned. It is unprecedented in Nepal's history that this kind of a thing has happened. And other opposition parties, except for the Nepali Congress and the UML, and I must say that within these two parties also, there is a huge dissent against the leadership, have obviously like to take benefit or use this movement to further their political objective. This also cannot be denied. But the fact remains that the government has utterly failed even in meeting this kind of a protest. See, they were not ready to, while they were being warned earlier that this kind of a protest is going to take place, but they were not ready to meet it. Only when they went to parliament and suddenly the use of force, I mean, one day 20 people have died. Almost 200 are in the hospital, as I get to know. This is a huge repression, and this repression of the opposition has been going on even earlier through legal methods, through all kind of other mechanisms and tools which the government could employ. So I think this is a much wider, and it will have very, very long-term consequences.
Ambassador Sikri, your opening comments, and do you think has Mr. Oli run out of time?
Well, I think that this is a coming together of many factors. I think, first of all, this whole issue of banning social media, it has affected the jobs of the youth. I mean, many people have lost their jobs because, nowadays with WhatsApp and so on, there are big issues. People work from home and so on. That is one. Secondly, it is the very, the social media companies, whether it is Meta and others, Facebook, etc., they have more or less refused to comply with the regulations of the government on registration of their company offices and this question of paying taxes. I mean, is Nepal trying to tax these digital companies, Meta and so on? This is a very big issue, and it's a big issue being discussed all over the world, but certainly in South Asia and even in Indonesia, this is a big issue. And of course, these companies, they take away huge amounts of profits and they don't want to pay any tax. So on the one hand, you have these issues of jobs and the company's issue of taxes, and the companies not complying with the government's regulation. But this whole spontaneity with which these protests have come about, the universality that it's acquiring, this really is a reflection of the very sad situation within Nepal. Of course, malgovernance, definitely. All the corruption cases, we must know that, of course, corruption cases are discussed primarily through social media, because these things never come in the print media, it's never discussed on the electronic media. It is only on the social media that you see these issues of corruption and naming of individuals and naming of individual cases. This comes. So obviously this clamping down on social media is seen directly as an attempt by the government to prevent the natural expression of frustration by the youth and their naming of individuals in corruption cases. So this is a very, very big factor, that it is seen as a prevention of freedom of expression, prevention of expressing the feeling of the youth against the corrupt leadership, and this is a very important factor here. Now, it's also acquiring a certain political universality, whether it is former Prime Minister Prachanda or it is, even one faction of the Nepali Congress is supposed to have joined these or expressed itself in favor of the protest of the Gen Z, although the party itself certainly is a coalition member with the government. So I think that the strength of these protests, the size of the protest and the way it has spread like wildfire across Nepal, and even in the Tarai there have been a lot of action by the police, and then the use of absolutely excessive force by the police. So this is a combination, another factor, the great anger among the youth, as you were showing in the visuals, about the excessive use of force by the police, which has actually killed so many people and injured many, many more. So this is going to raise a lot of strong feelings, not only among Gen Z, but among their parents and among others who have lost their loved ones and who have seen so many people injured. So I think that the capacity of the government to control this kind of protest, now this is the big issue now. How are they going to control these kind of protests? And as you said, the cabinet meeting or the National Security Council meeting chaired by Prime Minister Oli is underway right now. We do not know what they are going to come out with, but there's even reports that one of the crossing point, Bhairava crossing point in Lumbini district with India, that has also been shut down. So all these issues have come together in a way that is quite frightening to see. You mentioned Sri Lanka, and I think that this is very much in line with that, in the sense of the huge despair at the economic situation where jobs are at stake and where people who have jobs are losing them, and others are frustrated because they don't have jobs, and the question of corruption is not being answered by the people. They do say, for example, that all these Western companies have been banned, but Chinese TikTok has been spared from the ban, so Chinese TikTok is still functioning. So there are a whole lot of issues which have come together, but I think the capacity of the government to control this is very much on test now. Let us see what the cabinet meeting comes up with.
Now we did a poll, madam, on YouTube, and you'll be very surprised, and I want this to throw open to my guests, who joined me from Kathmandu. You'll be very surprised when we said that what is this protest about? More than 10,000 people have voted. They're saying the protest is not about social media ban. Rupesh, they're saying it's about corruption. So is social media, the protest on social media, just a symptom of the larger issue of corruption?
Yes, we can say that. As I don't actually agree what Ms. Beena earlier said, that mainstream media is not exposing the scams and corruption cases, what's going on in Nepal. We have been exposing big cases to small cases. On those cases, the big ministers and big politicians are also involved, and we have been naming them and asking for the lawful intimidation on them. But still, that's not happening from the side of government and the lawmakers. So that's what making people frustrated. People are not getting the positive response from the government or the lawmakers or the education, that those people who are involved in the corruption are getting punishment and are under custody. So that's making people frustrated, not only the Generation G. So this makes people outraged and have these kind of protests. We are having such kind of protests in smaller scale at times and bigger scales, like today's, that's happened today. That's the actual reason. We can say that.
बहरहाल साहब, आपको क्या लगता है ये जो प्रोटेस्ट धरना प्रदर्शन हो रहे हैं पूरे नेपाल के शहरों में चलते रहेंगे, क्योंकि कई सारे शहरों में कर्फ्यू लगा है, ये जानकारी आई है वायरस के माध्यम से?
जी, नेपाल के महत्वपूर्ण शहर में ये प्रदर्शन हो रही है कि ये सरकार ने सोशल मीडिया को बंदेज लगाया, पीपुल का, यंगर्स का व्यापक फ्रस्ट्रेशन था, और इसमें इस सरकार के खिलाफ में रहने वाला दल का घुसपैठ भी हुआ। उसके जरिए से देश के महत्वपूर्ण शहर में बहुत तनावग्रस्त स्थिति बन चुकी है। मेरे के निवेदन है कि मैं पहले भी किया हूं, सरकार के पास में भी मेरा डिमांड है, नेपाली कांग्रेस पार्टी का बैठक चल रहा है कि सरकार ने तुरंत सामाजिक संजाल का खुला करना चाहिए, जेनजी पुस्ता के मांग के संबोधन करना चाहिए। ये जनता का गुस्सा, ये यंगर्स का गुस्सा क्या है कि करप्शन, नेपाल की सुशासन का बहुत कमी है। इसमें हम भी पार्टी में लड़ रहे हैं और सरकार को भी बारंबार दबाव दे चुके हूं, दे रहा हूं। तो मेरा निवेदन है, नेपाली जनता, नेपाली यंगर्स, नेपाली दाजू भाई, दीदी बहनी, सोशल मीडिया यूजर्स को सारा को निवेदन है कि संयमता जरूरी है देश के लिए। देश ने बार बार इतना टाइप का द्वंद्व नहीं सह सकते हैं। देश ने स्थिरता, स्थायित्व, शांति के प्रोसेस में है नेपाल। इसके लिए आम नेपाली जनता ने, यंगर्स ने, इंटेलेक्चुअल पर्सन ने, ऑल पॉलिटिशियन, ऑल टाइप की पीपुल, ऑल पार्टी ने संयमता के जरूरी है। नेपाल में बड़ा खून खराबा हो रही है। 18-19 आदमी यंगर्स गुजर गई है। इसके लिए मेरा निवेदन है, सरकार से निवेदन है, तत्काल जेनजी का मार्ग संबोधन कीजिए, सामाजिक संजाल तत्काल ओपन कीजिए। इस सरकार के कांग्रेस पार्टी की तरफ भी मांग है, जो मूवमेंट कर रहा है जेनजी के पास में मेरे रिक्वेस्ट है कि मुल्क सर्वे है, मुल्क फर्स्ट है, कंट्री इज फर्स्ट। शो कंट्री के स्थायित्व के लिए, कंट्री के शांति के लिए, नेपाल की समृद्धि के लिए संयमता जरूरी है। इस संयमता के लिए मेरे भाइयों का, मेरे बहनों का, जेनजी पुस्ता का कांग्रेस पार्टी की तरफ से, मेरे तरफ से नम्र निवेदन है, स्टॉप दिस वायलेंस।
बिल्कुल। सुरेंद्र फुयाल, do you think that this will end up strengthening the democratic process in Nepal, or will it end up bleaching away what has been built post 2006, the pact which was reached, when Manmohan Singh was the Prime Minister?
There's a long historic period you have pointed out, so it's really difficult to say. Only time will tell what's going to happen. But I think one way of creating a democratic environment is to ensure free speech, and that could be lifting the ban on social media. That's one possibility. So it all depends on how the government reacts now. There's no going backward. It's all about going forward. And the freer the world, the more democratic Nepal becomes, the better it will be for the country. So you have to also keep in mind that just 6 months ago, Kathmandu witnessed violent pro-monarchy protests. There were similar violent scenes, and you played that, you broadcast that, I imagine, and you're coming back to Nepal after 6 months. So there are all kinds of elements that are at play. Genji is just one factor. They're taking the lead, but there's hardly any leader. No leader is there. Kathmandu mayor was trying to jump into the bandwagon. Opposition parties are, racing against time to cash in on the situation, trying to gain political brownie points. So all kinds of factors are at play. Players are, active. So the government will have to decide wisely, and even all the political forces that believe in democracy need to do some soul searching, because what Gen Z are demanding is not just resignation or end of an era, end of the KP Oli era. They're also demanding the end of the era of the big threes. Big three meaning Prachanda, KP Oli, Madhav Nepal, and other leaders who have been ruling the country since 2006. So I think, and then there's a demand for early election. So there are lots of discussions, ideas, that are being floated around, that are going on. So only time will tell, and it all also depends on how the government reacts tonight and tomorrow.
Okay.
And the next 24 hours are going to be crucial. Okay. And otherwise it will be too early to say.
Okay. Professor Muni, there are a lot of apprehensions. The idea of asking this question is not to delegitimize the protest, but a lot of people would say, quote unquote, is there a foreign hand? Something, which people spoke about in Bangladesh. So how do you categorize the protests in Kathmandu? Different from Bangladesh?
Well, it is different. It is not, because in Bangladesh, army intervened really to push Hasina out also. Without that, it would not have happened. Nepal's situation is slightly different. I have no doubt that this is not a challenge to democracy in Nepal. I have no doubt about it. But I tell you, as Mr. Puyal has said very rightly, that people would not accept any, shortcut to the solution, that you make a committee or do something or start arrogation in one way or the other. One of the options can be of having an interim arrangement which really looks for the next election. So far as foreign sources are concerned, I think Veena ji said it rightly, and I want to emphasize it, that there are reports, and I have not confirmed, but I have heard it from my Nepali friends talking to them today on phone, that the Soros's open society people are involved there. And as you know, all the social media networks are stakeholders, and they are all linked to the US. So US government has nothing to do perhaps with it, but you are asking of the foreign influences, it cannot be ruled out. And exactly this situation was there in Sri Lanka and to a very large extent also in Bangladesh. So, these are the hands which are hidden behind it. And students are in a very rebellious mood. They can be exploited, they can be diverted and twisted also. A possibility, I don't rule it out. But I think the basic approach should be that the present leadership is not acceptable, and I don't think that they would be able to find any way out of this crisis unless there is a drastic change takes place.
I'm also joined by Professor Swaran Singh. Sir, your opening comments?
I think the fundamental confrontation that we notice here is the Gen Z is saying how social media has helped them unravel the whole culture of corruption in Nepal, particularly targeting 3 leaders who've been shuffling between them despite enormous political instability. So they talk about culture of corruption, and the government, and KP Sharma Oli, who talks about national dignity.
So one more thing which is coming, Professor, also one more thing. Nepo kids, dynasty politics. There is another word which is there trending on YouTube, because sometimes you get to glimpse the real picture because it's the most unregulated medium globally, even more unregulated than Twitter. So the words which are coming up is not social media, it's corruption and Nepo kids.
So it's a pervasive corruption which is being unraveled, and government is saying it's social media itself is corrupting the culture. So one is talking of corruption culture, other is talking of corrupting of the culture, is how the broad division looks like at this time. But about 3 platforms, I understand, including TikTok, are still open and are still going viral with what you said, Nepo kids, luxury, goods and expensive vacations, etc., etc. I want to bring in this foreign hand as well, because it looks like social media not just connects people among protesters, but this is a news which is going around the world now on social platforms, on legacy media and so on. And there is always this fear of, as Professor Muni just mentioned, what happened in Sri Lanka, the insinuations in Pakistan that Prime Minister Imran Khan had made. Then, of course, the Prime Minister from Bangladesh made similar insinuations of American connection. And I think that also needs to be understood as to how far that is the possibility here. The immediate requirement here is for the government to call these people to send some kind of representation and see how they can tell what needs to be done. Otherwise, this protest, the longer it goes, the more criminal elements will get into these protests. And then that completely derails the process in a very different direction every next hour, every next day.
Because Professor Singh, that's where the question is. That's where the question is, I really don't want to say that, is it going to replicate what happened in 2011? That was the first lateral protest born out of the modern media technologies like Twitter. People started associating themselves on the idea of thought, not through the organizational structure. Now this is a Gen Z. It's far more connected. There the words were moving, here even the pictures and the videos move. You can talk to each other without using the formal media outputs because you don't need them. You can directly communicate with each other. So Ambassador Sikri, my question to you is very simple. One, what are the consequences of these protests for India, New Delhi, keeping in mind this is the third we are dealing in context of our neighborhood politics, and is it going to end up weakening the democratic process, ma'am, or strengthening the democratic process? Protests can work both ways.
Well, first thing is that I think this is one occasion where there's this huge protest, but there's no mention. India is not being named at all. So it is very healthy sign that it is something entirely internal to Nepal. So I think the question of India's involvement or question of India being named is not there at all. It is an internal eruption. Now, the comparison with Sri Lanka is relevant because I think in Sri Lanka, they were protesting against the dire economic situation and very quickly went back to the democratic democratic structure to continue it. Now, in Bangladesh, on the other hand, you did see the external hand much more visibly because it was a very well-planned regime change operation, and that is what is in progress even now. And there's no indication or even interest in going back to any kind of democratic structure. And even the question of elections, which have been called for on paper, but there's great skepticism among the people of Bangladesh whether there's any serious interest in holding these elections, and the focus on reforms is still there. So that is a slightly more different situation. But I can see that here in Nepal, the question of the foreign hand in terms of the interests of the Western-based, internet, the social media groups, whether it is Meta and including Facebook and others, that's very much there because you yourself had mentioned in the beginning that the Nepal government has made a demand, A, for the registration of these companies formally in Nepal, and secondly, for them to pay taxes. Now, this is indeed a very big issue. This is an issue not just for Nepal, but it's an issue that's being discussed all over, where these organizations, do get enormous financial benefit from.
There is also another element. 3 years ago, I made a documentary on it. I had interviewed Professor Muni on it. I'll ask this question to Surendra Foyar. Do you think that the pro-monarchy groups within the Nepali society and politics can piggyback on these protests?
The indication was already there yesterday when one of the RPP leaders, the pro-monarchy party leaders, Gyanendra Sahi, said that he would be keen on joining it. Although he was not seen today in the protest, the protesters that were on the street 6 months ago, there was another character, very controversial businessman, Durga Prasad. He was also very keen on joining it. Although he was not clearly seen today, I'm sure they must have done something about it, and they must have joined or done something. That's my imagination. But yeah, there are forces, not just the pro-monarchy elements, but also the opposition party. For example, one of the opposition parties, the Maoist party, the leader was very aggressive against, is still very aggressive against KP Oli. He was, against this government's move to ban social media. So all kinds of elements are, trying to piggyback on it. But only fact-finding missions and investigations could reveal that all, come up with exact details as to what happened, who infiltrated, who intruded, and all that. But yeah, this was very fluid because it was leaderless. There was no single leader behind the protest, and it was all spontaneous, and all kinds of people, Gen Z, meaning kids aged between 13 to 28, were on the streets, and then there were others who
But Mr. Foyal, power, there's a whole maxim, power abhors vacuum. Professor Muni, you wanted to come in?
Well, I said, as we have all discussed, all political parties, particularly opposition parties and other factions, will try to take advantage of the situation. But I can assure you that the royalists cannot really capture this movement.
Okay.
They cannot come and destroy the old structure, howsoever they may try to do that. Similarly, even the Maoists, they will take an advantage. I think somebody can say that some of the violent actions probably have been done by the old Maoist cadres or whatever else it is. But the right of a Republican citizen is very powerful. It has taken roots, and I don't think they are going to surrender it. So whatever the political parties or vested interests do, they will try to take advantage, but there is no way they can lead this kind of a resentment which is all nationwide.
Okay. Professor Swaran Singh, do you agree that the democratic roots in Nepal have strengthened over a period of time and may be able to sustain, absorb and incorporate its political protest the way it happens in India? What we saw through Lokpal and other protests, we were able to absorb it.
I think the first thing is the democratic roots, as Professor Moni will vouch, have grown over decades. It's not just only now. And every time, of course, the youth was at the forefront around the world, but also particularly in case of Nepal. One after another examples of protests leading to further democratization of the entire process. And I understand republicanism and federalism is fairly grounded now in Nepal. But when we talk about India, I think I was completely surprised why the government in Nepal was not prepared for such a response, because the process goes back to Supreme Court judgment last September. And, 7 days before, when KP Sharma Oli was in Beijing, of course, this process was unfolding of requiring registration. And 26 of these applications, when, the main earners of foreign exchange and people of Nepal are around the world, this is the Sarah time, they need to be constantly connected. Young generation is, of course, they are the digital natives, as we call them. And not to expect some response like this when you ban 26 platforms. India, if you remember, in 2021 had taken a very different approach, doing the same thing, asking for grievance redressal officers, for compliance officers to be locally designated, etc. But India did it in such a fashion of using IT Act Section 69, of very selectively targeting certain URLs, targeting certain accounts. And all we had is op-eds were written in criticism, or you had court cases, or the UN rapporteur was saying that India's action was not in line with human rights, etc. Very different, very calibrated way of dealing with the same situation. Here it is blindfolded walking into trouble, which Nepal is doing, or is it arrogance of power? Just same three leaders keep rotating. I think that is another issue of frustration among young people there, that there is no fundamental change and they sustain that instability constantly. And of course, increasing the whole culture of corruption over a period of time is a major question for them. And then not being prepared and seeing that parliament is getting attacked. Right now, media is saying 16 people have died on the ground, more than 100 are injured badly. And that kind of chaos should have been anticipated. It's fundamentally law and order problem. And if they don't manage it well, of course, as everybody is saying, everybody else will piggy bank and create more chaos there. And it will be a prolonged period of chaos for Nepal, which is absolutely not good for India, because India, is in the neighborhood again. And some of this anger will start drifting to India. The question was, India is not being named now. But if it sustains itself, immediately some of it will get deflected to India as well.
Absolutely. There's a bit of a breaking news. Nepal's Home Minister has offered to resign. One will have to wait and see whether Oli accepts the resignation or not. It's a story which we are going to track through the day, through the week. I thank you all of you for joining me on this part of the conversation. So this was On Point 1. In the second On Point, we look at India's balancing act with China and United States of America, but after a short break.
एसोसिएट स्पॉन्सर एंकर टूथपेस्ट, नए जमाने की नई सुरक्षा।
ब्यूटीफुल 18th सेंचुरी और अभी तक चल रही है। ज्यादा नहीं चली। कुछ कहा? प्रोमिनेंस नहीं, प्रोमिनेंस। वाओ, ओरिजिनल।
या स्पेन से लाए थे।
वहीं छोड़ा थे। प्रोमिनेंस नहीं है ना?
प्रोमिनेंस?
मैं कहना चाह रहा था कि प्रोमिनेंस नहीं है। प्रोमिनेंस मतलब प्रोमिनेंस विंडोज, इसमें है हाईएस्ट वेदर रेजिस्टेंस और घर को रखे सेफ फ्रॉम टर्माइट्स।